Crawl Spacers, welcome to our 700th podcast. That is hard to believe. I thought, what better way to celebrate than with one of my favorite writers? We've got Peter David in the house. What's going on, Peter? How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good now that we got the whole microphone thing sorted out.
I pulled my engineering trick. I'm like, well, let's reboot. That works 99% of the time, but we didn't have to do that. So
No.
There you go. This is our 700th episode, Peter. That's hard to believe. You were our very first guest. I've got the date up here. It was January of 2007.
Wow.
You were on. And then I had you back on in 2011. I think we talked about that Spider-Man Vault book that you did. Which
Quite possibly, yeah.
Which was very cool.
Thank
and
you.
then we took a 10-year sabbatical where I didn't call you on the phone. And now we've hooked up the cameras. We've got the microphones. In another 10 years, we'll be on the holodeck talking to each other, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, I feel like we have become Epcot Center because when you went on the World of Tomorrow ride, they depicted people talking to each other via computers, which when they first came up with this was like something way in the future. Now we are just doing it automatically.
Exactly. It's just crazy. So let's talk about your current project that you're working on. It just came out, I think, last week, which is Symbiote Spider-Man Crossroads.
Yes. Talk
a bit about this book. This takes place before your Hulk run with the Matlow stuff and Sal Buscema.
It does indeed. Symbiote Spider-Man has been very well received, which I'm very grateful for.
I'm digging it.
It's set during the time when Spider-Man was wearing the symbiote, but had no idea that it was actually alive. So I'm able to revisit things from Marvel's past that people look at with a great deal of nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly.
And I decided that I was going to revisit the Hulk during the period when Bill Mantlo had him at the Crossroads.
Right.
And I thought I'd send him to some interesting places because the Crossroads meant that I could pretty much send him anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So I decided to basically send him to the Kirbyverse.
Oh.
At the end of issue 2, which is up there, Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy show up.
Oh, nice.
The next issue, they're going to be thrown into the Eternals world.
Oh, okay.
So, if you're a Jack Kirby fan, this is definitely a series you want to be reading.
And you haven't, I don't remember on your Hulk run, you go into the Crossroads before. And
no.
that was, I mean, you touched on that issue 312 with the Hulk's origin, which was during the Crossroads, but this is kind of untapped.
I don't think I wrote issue 312.
Oh, I know, but with the Peter's father and that storyline influenced a lot of what you did on the Hulk, I think.
Bruce's father, yes.
Yeah, Bruce's father, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. That story, that Bill Mantlo story, really codified a good deal of the Hulk's personality for me.
Right.
Because that suggested to me that Bruce Banner was suffering from what was then called multiple personality disorder.
Right.
Because that's usually something that happens as a result of child abuse.
Right.
And Brian Banner definitely abused him, not sexually or anything like that.
Right. But mentally, yeah.
Yeah, but mentally abused him. And that made me realize that the reason that Bruce Banner had never been able to cure himself of being the Hulk, aside from the obvious reason that if he did, then we'd have no more book,
right?
Was that he always worked from the outside going in, trying to figure out how to undo the effects of the gamma radiation.
Right.
And that suggested to me that his problem, the only way to cure him was actually from the inside out. To do it in the way that most multiple personality disorder cases were cured, which was to use hypnosis to merge the various personalities. And I realized that I was eventually going to do a story like that. It took me 4 years to get to it.
Right.
But I eventually did do that story where Doc Samson, with the aid of the Ringmaster, hypnotized him and created the merged Hulk.
Right.
And that just gave us a fully integrated Bruce Banner for the first time in the character's decades-long history.
Right, yeah.
And so I decided that if I was going to be doing him in Symbiote, I couldn't do that stuff because when he was wearing the costume, the Hulk was still at the Crossroads.
Right. Dr. Strange just kicked him there in Hulk 300. Yeah.
Exactly. So if it was going to be a crossover with the Hulk, chronologically, I had to do the Crossroads stories.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at the various possibilities that lent to me. And that's where the story that's currently unfolding took off.
Yeah. You started writing Symbiote in 2019. It looks like. Talk about how that project came about. It's nice. Little span of like Amazing 252 to 259 when you still had that suit on.
Yeah. Basically, what happened was that Tom Holland was going to be wearing a black costume in Spider-Man Far From Home. And Marvel decided to do a Symbiote Spider-Man series to tie in with the black costume. Now, the one that he wore was not a symbiote of any sort, but it was nevertheless Spider-Man in a black costume.
It was Night Monkey. I don't think that would have looked as good as...
No, not remotely. So Marvel decided to cash in on the black costume that was going to be showing up in the movie by putting him back into the black and white costume from the old days. And they asked me to write it, and sales were through the roof.
Yeah.
And of course, all you have to do to get a Marvel series is to have sales that are through the roof. So they said, would you be interested in doing another one? And I said, sure.
Yeah.
And we've just been kind of going from there.
No doubt. And you've had coming up on a 3-year run of this book.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I generally try to keep with the tradition and tie in with the movies that are coming out or the TV shows that are coming out. That's why I had Captain Marvel, now known as Photon, showing up in one, because I knew that she was going to be showing up in WandaVision.
Right.
That's why I had the Eternals show up in the series that's currently coming out, because the Eternals movie is pending.
Right.
Yep. So I just keep trying to tie into the movies, because what the hell? Why not?
Why not? It's what do they call that? Synergy in corporate speak.
Yeah.
One that you did, it was a one shot of that I really liked, and I, as a kid, because I'm a kid of the '80s. And that book, Absolute Carnage Symbiote Spider-Man #1, you tied into that traveler. You gave him a backstory. He was a judge.
Yeah.
It was a great story. I love that one.
Thank you. Marvel approached me about writing it. They said, okay, we want you to do a story about this guy who was wearing the black and white costume for like a page.
Exactly.
We had no idea who the hell he was or what his backstory was. And I have to admit, I was kind of surprised how much people love that issue, considering Spider-Man is absolutely nowhere in it.
He's not.
No, he's not. The symbiote is not there. We have Carnage show up. But the symbiote isn't there. That's the Symbiote Spider-Man isn't anywhere there. The closest we have is the tourist.
Yes.
Who has no idea what the hell is going on, never meets Spider-Man, has no connection to Spider-Man.
This is from Peter Parker's spec 99 and 100, I think.
Okay.
I think he just escaped the Baxter Building, if memory serves. And he was slithering around New York, and he just got on that random dude and started swinging.
Yes.
And that was right. That's all you were handed.
That's all I was handed. I made up the guy's entire backstory.
Yeah.
And it came out, I thought, pretty well.
It did. I loved you tied in.
What's interesting is that the guy, if you look at the original, the guy's visual changes completely from one issue to the next. He's in two different issues. That's the visual we use for the comic book.
Right. But when his next page, the different visual. Oh yeah, he does change, doesn't he?
Yeah. He completely changes. We went with the first one because what the hell? Why not?
Well, you had 50-50. He's got gray hair there, and then he's got I guess kind of blonde or
Yeah, it's two different artists and nobody
yeah.
consulted with each other. So theoretically,
Yeah.
it's two different guys, which means we could theoretically do a second whole issue
Yeah.
about whoever the hell the other guy is.
And you tied in one of my favorite D-list. She would probably be insulted, but the White Rabbit
Excellent.
was used into there. So I
Yes.
just it worked out perfectly. She scared the son to death.
Yeah.
Essentially, just a awesome story. I thought that was great.
Thank you.
So, what is it like? Do the editors, or do you go back to the archives and say, okay, well, he was on a symbiote here, or how do you go back into the archives and find like story material that could possibly be a long lost tale? Is it a combo of both? I guess I don't know.
It's a little of both. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes the editors give me broad stroke hints
Right.
of things they'd like to do, and they're great at digging up backstory material.
Okay.
I mean, Marvel has a whole file transfer system now,
No.
and I've got dozens and dozens of issues of Spider-Man sitting on my hard drive that I'm able to read over, and ideally those issues prompt ideas.
Yeah.
The Mysterio one just came to me very quickly. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
But it did. The others have been a little bit more work.
Yeah.
You know, it's worth it.
I think, is Mysterio one of your favorites? You used him in Friendly Neighborhood years ago, too.
Yes, I did. I
Yeah.
really like Mysterio. The funny thing, when he showed up in Friendly Neighborhood,
Yeah.
I wanted to get Todd Nauck to draw Friendly Neighborhood because my then artist needed a break.
Yeah.
And the editors were not really interested in having Todd Nauck draw it. And they didn't like his style. And I said, trust me, his style is going to be perfect. Because I'd worked with him. I'd worked with him on Young Justice.
Yeah.
And they said, fine, we'll have him draw the Mysterio 2-parter. And a week or so later, I get a call from the editors, and they said, we're getting in work from Todd Nauck, and it's really great, and it's coming in really fast. And I said, yes, I know. And they said, can you make it a 3-parter? So I just brought in a third Mysterio in order to expand it to 3 parts. And after that, the regular artist dropped off the book, and Todd became the regular artist.
Yeah. Would have saved a lot of time if they just listened to you. I mean,
well, they did eventually, but once we got Todd on the book on a regular basis, he just did a fantastic job.
Yeah, he did. He did. So I don't overlook the chat coming in. We've got Costas says, greetings from Greece. Hope you're doing good, my friend. Been following each and every one of your books. Cannot wait to meet you again soon. So that's
excellent.
Nice. We've got, let's see. Oh man, I look away from chat. SoFlo Entertainment says, Mr. David, you're one of my favorite Spider-Man writers. Thank you for your great work.
Happy to do it.
Matt says, what was your first written work outside of comics?
Well, my first written work outside of comics was when I was working as a reporter for a small newspaper called the Germantown Courier in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I thought I was going to become a reporter until I realized that was not for me. My first fiction work outside of comics was a short story that ran in Isaac Asimov science fiction magazine. It was like 300 words.
Okay, that's cool.
My first novel work that got published with my name on it was a book called Nightlife, which was about King Arthur coming back to the world and running for mayor of New York.
Oh, okay.
So that was a lot of fun.
That's cool. We've got Adam. Congrats on 700 episodes, Brett. Thank you, Adam. Trust Obey 1016. Happy 700. Thank you, Adam. Pat is one of my favorite Spider-Man writers of all time. Mine too. Josiah said he's reading the book right now, Symbiote Spider-Man. So that's awesome.
Oh, actually, I didn't know. I was just talked about like 3 different books, so I wasn't sure which book you meant. Okay, excellent.
Let's see. Durante, I just wanted to ask Mr. David, how does he tackle writing Peter Parker now as opposed to the way he did back in the 80s and then in the 2000s? Is he still the same guy?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at that point in the writing, I'm really writing him the way that I did when I first started writing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't undergone a ton of character development since I first started writing him, considering this stuff is set back in the 80s.
Right.
So I'm just putting on my Peter Parker hat and writing him in the way that I did back then. I'd like to think that I'm a better writer than I was then. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was at a convention just this past weekend, and a guy came up to me and told me that he was reading my Maestro series, and that he thought I was a much better writer than the guy who wrote Future Imperfect 20 years ago. And he said this in all seriousness. And I said, I'm the one who wrote Future Imperfect. But I chose to take it as a compliment because he was basically saying that he thought I had improved in the intervening decades, which one should hope one does.
Yeah. After he took his foot out of his mouth, you took it the right way.
He left the area pretty quickly after
There you go. Mary says, woohoo, Peter David is the man. I would agree. There you go.
Okay.
Adam says Symbiote Spider-Man is super fun.
Good.
Michael says Peter David is the first writer I have followed from book to book.
I've actually heard that from a number of fans, that they said that they were not paying attention to the writers until they stumbled onto my work. And then all of a sudden they became very aware of the writers, which is fine. I mean, I still remember, I can't remember. No, I mean, probably the first comic book writer I was ever really aware of was Stan Lee.
Yeah.
But that's, pretty much all of us,
right.
We're in that case. I mean, the first Marvel comic I ever read was Fantastic Four Annual number 3, which was the wedding of Sue.
Yeah.
And I was able to follow that entire comic book, even though I knew none of the characters. Yeah. I didn't know the FF. I didn't know Doctor Doom. I didn't know the Avengers. I didn't know any of these characters. I didn't know the Watcher. And yet I was able to follow everything that was going on because that's the quality of writer that Stan was. He wrote for people for whom this was their first issue.
Right.
I mean, that's just kind of a truism in comic books. You always write as if it's somebody's first issue.
Right.
And FF number 3, Annual 3 was mine. The only thing that I didn't understand in that book was when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby showed up at the end in tuxedos and top hats, and they were not allowed to go into the wedding.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know who these two guys were.
That's funny. What was your first Spider-Man book? Do you remember your first Spider-Man book? Or
the
first time you ever saw him? First time you ever saw the character?
The first Spider-Man book I read wasn't exactly a Spider-Man book. It was called Marvel Tales.
Oh, the reprints, yeah.
And it was reprints. And that was my first real introduction to Spider-Man. The first comic that was current, that was Spider-Man, that I bought off the stands. I don't remember the issue number, but it was the one with Spider-Man standing there in his darkened room with his hand covering his face. And the issue was the death of Silvermane, who since has come back from the dead.
Right.
But that was the first issue I bought during the original run of Spider-Man.
That's awesome.
Marvel Tales, it was, some Lee Ditko stuff.
Right.
Very early on.
When I was a kid, around issue 137 of Marvel Tales, they started reprinting the Ditko and Stan Lee stuff. And as a little kid, I'm like, this looks a little different. Did he just get bit by the spider? Because I was picking up Amazing with Roger Stern and John Romita Jr. But I still enjoyed him as a kid of the 80s. Those comics are timeless.
Oh, yeah. I mean, different art styles.
Yeah.
My first exposure to different art styles came as a result of the old Marvel Superheroes animated series. If you remember that, for those who have never seen it, you could say that it was some of the most faithful tellings of Marvel stories ever, because what they basically did was just take individual panels and animate like a section of the panel. Like, they'd have Thor swinging his hammer and you just see the hand moving.
I wish they would put that on Disney Plus. I've never seen the episodes except what I've seen on YouTube, and the
really? Yeah.
Spider-Man 67 series I have on DVD, but I think kids would love that too on Disney
Plus.
Oh,
I bet they would. And the thing was, as a kid, I'm watching this and I'm noticing for the first time different art styles, because a Don Heck Thor looks nothing like a Jack Kirby Thor.
Yep.
A Don Heck Iron Man doesn't look anything like a Gene Colan Iron Man.
Right.
And they would intersperse different panels in order to tell the story. It wouldn't be utterly faithful to the comic. They would have certain stock shots that they would use, but the artist would change, and the length of Thor's hammer would vary by a foot from one shot to the next. Yes. Or Iron Man would have a nose and then he wouldn't have a nose. I mean,
exactly.
It was just kind of insane. And that was my introduction to the concept that different artists bring radically different styles to the characters.
Right. Yeah. We have Simon on Facebook says, love Symbiote Spider-Man. I've always loved your work. Friendly Neighborhood was one of my favorite titles. Hoping for a 2099 omnibus next year to tie in with the Spider-Verse film.
Oh, that would be great.
That would be
would be great. I mean, people ask me, what was my reaction to Miguel showing up at the end of the Spider-Verse film?
Yeah, what'd you think?
My response is, Dan Slott was at the Marvel screening for that film, and he was there with a reporter. And when the lights came up, the reporter turned to Dan and said, who was it who screamed yes when it said meanwhile in Nueva York? And Dan said, yeah, that would be Peter David, the creator of Spider-Man 2099.
That's awesome. Yeah, hopefully he's in the next one. I mean, they totally set it up for him to be there. So
they really did. I hope he is.
Yeah, I do too. Let's see. Austin, thanks on 700 episodes. Thank you, Austin. Appreciate that. Fakeman with the super chat. Thank you. Happy 700 episodes.
Hello.
Heroing says, Mr. David, who do you enjoy writing more, Bruce Banner or Peter Parker?
Well, probably Bruce Banner, because I wrote him for so long. I mean, I wrote Bruce Banner for 12 years.
Yeah.
And he has incredible psychological depth. I mean, Peter Parker is much more normal.
Yeah.
So I suppose that Peter would be more fun, because he's just basically a smart ass and a wiseacre. Whereas Bruce Banner, I get to write some incredibly dramatic scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. Vinkman says that he finally picked up a White Rabbit Marvel Legend. Who would have thought they would make such a thing as a White Rabbit?
Did?
Yeah, they did. I've seen
an action figure of her.
Yep. They made.
Okay, now I gotta get one.
I had to pick this guy up. Who would have thought they'd make Frogman?
They did?
They made Frogman as a Marvel. He's even got the springs on the back, and you can see the little eyes inside the mouth.
Yeah, I think I go to the comic book store tomorrow.
It's just crazy that everything is up. Speaking of Friendly Neighborhood, did you read the latest issue of Amazing? They reference Friendly Neighborhood in it.
No.
When they explain what Kindred is doing to Mysterio.
So, no, I have not seen that issue yet.
Okay. There's a little editor's note at the bottom. Check out Friendly Neighborhood.
I haven't been to the comic book store this week, so.
Okay. Let's see. Landon says, what was your favorite run?
That's like asking who my favorite child is. I mean, I have various runs that I think worked better than others. Selecting a favorite run of my comics is really problematic. I mean, if you're talking about all the comics I ever wrote, I have kind of a fondness for the Atlantis Chronicles, a 7-issue series I did for DC, in which I deviated from all of my norms in comic books. There were no jokes. There was no contemporary dialogue. It was a historical drama that covered thousands of years.
Right.
So in terms of pushing the boundaries, I would say that. I have a certain fondness for the Death of Jean DeWolf,
Yeah.
which was, the series that launched my work on Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Fallen Angel
Mm-hmm.
was a tremendously fun series. If I'm looking at my Hulk work, probably my favorite is Future Imperfect, which is only 2 issues, but it was Future Imperfect.
Right. Yeah.
That's some.
Speaking of the Maestro, Josiah enjoyed the recent work that you did on that.
There's a good segue.
Yeah. Let's see. Adam says the Return of the Sin Eater was the first time I checked who the writer was as a kid. So
there you go.
There you go.
That was very early in my run. I have no idea what in the world. Oh wait, the Death of the Sin Eater. That was the sequel.
That was the sequel. Yeah.
That was the sequel, right? Okay.
If in doing my research, and that means, AKA, if Wikipedia is right, this is your first issue, Spec 103. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And talk about that. The history of that is that you sold the story to Jim Owsley, but
yes,
and Jim Shooter wasn't keen on the idea of sales mixing with writing, huh?
Oh, it wasn't just Shooter. Nobody in Editorial.
Nobody wanted it, huh?
No, Editorial was uniformly against me writing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
They felt that we shouldn't be mixing sales and editorial.
Okay.
I never understood that point of view because in sales, my job was to sell all Marvel comics.
Yeah.
So when I worked on Spectacular Spider-Man, in order to avoid accusations, I wound up doing pretty much nothing to push my work on Spectacular Spider-Man. I certainly gave it no additional push and solicitation information.
Right.
I didn't call anyone and say, hey, do you want to reorder it? I just treated it like another book and gave it no particular attention.
Right.
But that did not deter Editorial from absolutely hating my work on Spider-Man.
Mm.
Their point of view was that someone who was just starting out in writing shouldn't get to do the flagship character.
Yeah.
And what broke me up was when J.J. Abrams' son was announced to be doing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The fans reacted in exactly the same way. They said someone who hasn't been writing shouldn't get to do Spider-Man. He's the flagship character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice to see how little things have changed in the intervening decades.
Well, in all due respect, though, your first issue was miles better than that book.
I haven't read Abrams.
It's oof. Yeah. We'll talk about that later, but
okay.
You knocked it out of the park, and
thank you.
This is a classic that we're still talking about today. I think this is your, if you go by that first issue that was published in June of '85, this is your 36th year of writing Spider-Man.
Jesus Christ.
I know. So this is one that I think got your name out there. The Death of Jean DeWolf proved that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. The books were so well written that Editorial was convinced that Owsley was writing them and putting my name on them. Why he would do that, no one ever actually offered any explanation.
Yeah.
But they were convinced that Owsley was actually writing these books.
Unbelievable.
Well, it was really something of a different time.
Yeah.
The concept of somebody working in the business side, writing for Editorial, went against the fundamental concept of how these things were viewed by Marvel Editorial. Their philosophy was, if you were creative, you would be working for Marvel Editorial. If you were not creative, you were working on business, because if you were creative, you'd be working for Marvel Editorial. It was something of a catch-22 in that philosophy.
Way to put everybody in a little slot. That just sounds so one-sided and just narrow-mindedness. But yeah,
it was kind of insane. I mean, I will always remember this one editor who said that the first issue of The Death of Jean DeWolf I had Spider-Man find out that Jean was dead, and I have him react the way that any normal person would react. He says,
Right.
"My God, she's dead? Like, she can't be dead. I just saw her last week."
Mm-hmm.
And the editor told me that what I should have done was have Spider-Man rip a lamppost out of its base and scream, "I can't believe she's dead," and start smashing up cars with it. Because, of course, whenever a Marvel superhero gets bad news, his instinct is to do thousands of dollars of property damage. This was the mindset that I was dealing with. They came up with some of the most bizarre.
That's strange.
And yet, this is how memories shift. Jim Owsley fired me off of Spider-Man, basically in order to save his job. I ran into Owsley at a convention, it was like 2 years ago.
Right.
And Owsley says to me, "Why did you leave Peter Parker?" And I said, "You fired me."
Oh, yeah, that.
He went, "What?" I said, "Dude, you fired me off the book." He goes, "No, I didn't." I said, "Yes, you did." And at this convention that I was at in North Carolina, we ran into Jim Shooter at a restaurant. And Jim was telling me what a wonderful writer I was.
Oh, no.
Back in the day, he acknowledged that it was unusual or unexpected for somebody from direct sales to be such a good writer, but it was clear what a brilliant writer I was.
That doesn't sound like the case in the 80s, what was coming out of his mouth.
No, it was not. I mean, I will always remember Tom DeFalco telling me, we were in Owsley's office, and you're going to love this story. And DeFalco says to me that my problem as a writer was that I didn't think about the next issue. I was all about what happened in this issue, and I never looked to the future. And he gives an example. He says, I could write meaning him, could write a story in which we kill off J. Jonah Jameson. And he would have an incredibly dramatic death scene, and he would die in Spider-Man's arms, and Spidey would reveal his identity to them, and they would come to a final meeting of minds before Jonah dies. And then Tom says to me triumphantly, "But what do you do the next issue?" And without hesitation, I said, "I'd have the Kingpin by the Daily Bugle." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "The Kingpin's a businessman. I'd have him buy the Daily Bugle. And the Kingpin's going to go to the Daily Bugle, and he'll say, 'Look, I don't give a damn what news stories you run. That's not my business. As long as you make money, you're not going to get any interference from me,' which, let's face it, is something of an improvement of my predecessor. Oh, and by the way, I've looked over your health benefits, and they suck. So you're going to be getting decent health benefits from now on, and you're going to be getting dental as well." And now half the reporters are going, "We can't work for the Kingpin. He's a criminal." But the other half of the reporters are going, "He's not going to interfere," which is more than Jonah ever did. And by the way, health care.
Yeah. I always wonder how Spider-Man...
And now there's going to be a strike at the Daily Bugle, and reporters are going to be marching in front of the Daily Bugle in protest. And Peter is stuck with the situation because does he cross the picket line in order to go into the Bugle? Does he violate the trust of his friends and go in because healthcare?
Yeah.
And the Kingpin's going to expand it to include relatives. So Aunt May would be covered. Holy crap. And I turned to Owsley, and I'm jumping up and down. I'm going, "Jim, we got to do it. We got to kill off Jonah Jameson." And poor Tom is sitting there going, "Okay, you clearly don't understand the point I was trying to make." And I'm going, no, I understood it. We definitely need to kill off Jonah Jameson. I couldn't talk Owsley. And Owsley's sitting there going, couldn't talk him into it, but it would have rocked.
That sounds like a year's worth of stories right there.
Right there, yeah.
I mean, the first time Spider-Man loses some teeth, he gets his back broken. He needs some health care. The Kingpin's offering it. There you go. Along with the Death of Jean DeWolf, the second time that I'm like, who is this writer? Was one of my favorite stories is the Commuter Cometh. I love that story. I suspect, and I don't know if it's true, but when the Spider-Man Homecoming, he goes to the suburbs, and I thought of this story where he can't swing. Did you think they got that from this issue too?
I have no idea if they got it from that issue. I mean, I know where I got the idea.
No, tell me about that.
Back in the day, we had costumed actors. We had actors who wore various character costumes. One of them was Jonathan Frakes.
Oh, it's Captain America.
Captain America.
Yeah.
And there was one day where the actor who usually plays Captain America, for all I know is Frakes, was walking around in the Spider-Man costume. And I thought to myself, boy, Spider-Man's costume looks really stupid when he's just walking around. Because if you look at the comic books, he's usually in a crouch or sticking to something. He's very rarely just walking around with his shoulders swinging.
Right.
And I thought to myself, what would happen if Spider-Man was somewhere where all he could do was walk? He'd probably feel pretty freaking stupid.
Yeah.
And that prompted the Commuter Cometh story, in which he winds up having to go to the suburbs in pursuit of a bad guy. And he's walking around in his Spider-Man costume. And, of course, people are looking at him going, I wonder who that guy in the Spider-Man costume is. Because if you're walking around, there's no way to let people know that you're who you dressed up to be.
Exactly. And it was funny to see that on film where he was shooting webs and they were going nowhere into the sky. I mean, it's perfect visual.
It really is. I mean, I can't say for sure that they got it from my comic book, but they might have.
Right. I don't know if you've ever seen the video. There was a YouTuber that put that story they animated the panels, and he had some voice actors do it. And my daughter played the little girl here. And
that little girl is my daughter, Shayna.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, my daughter,
I put her name in there. Yeah.
That's awesome. My daughter voiced her when they animated it, and the guy had me do this guy.
Oh, great.
And my wife,
I gotta look this thing up.
I'll send you the thing on email. And my wife voiced the blonde, the wife.
Oh, okay.
Where it was kind of, we just got in front of the mic and we all sent the audio files to the animator. It was Thwip Studios on YouTube, and I'll send that to you. It was fun. Link. It was really fun. But that was one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man stories. And
fantastic.
So
I mean, I actually sent the artist reference on the little girl on the big wheel. I mean, that was my daughter Shayna. It looked just like her.
How old is she now?
Now? She's 40.
Oh wow.
Yes, that's how far back that was.
Anyway, that's so awesome. That's funny. We got a comment from Mary. She goes, I was wondering if you've been reading the current Immortal Hulk series. Do you have any thoughts on it? To my enjoyment, your Joe Fixit creation has become a very integral part in the series.
I've been reading it on and off. There's a lot going on in that comic book. It's not the easiest to follow. I mean, I'm a couple of issues behind. I'm a little puzzled about Joe Fixit because he looks like Bruce Banner.
Yeah, he's not gray. Yeah,
he's not gray, and
he's kind of like a mobster more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand. I mean, I'm glad that she likes it, and I don't want to denigrate the writer's work, but Joe Fixit was not a separate psychological personality of the Hulk. He was a name that the Hulk came up with because he didn't want to call himself the Hulk. He was trying to create another identity. The Gray Hulk was one of his identities, but Joe Fixit was, a name that he adopted. But, what the hell? Yeah. When I read it, I enjoy it, but, I just kind of find myself scratching my head a little bit because there's just so much stuff going on. Right. And they're rooting around in hell, I think, and there's all these various personalities,
Yeah.
to the point where they seem to have taken to an insane level that I would never have dreamt of
Right.
in terms of the various personalities.
And
But
Rick Jones is in a weird spot. He's not married to Marlo. He's merged with something. So he's just kind
yeah,
of
I don't know what the hell is going on with Rick.
I used
And
to
they had
love.
Doc Samson buried in a Christian cemetery, which I was kind of pissed off about.
Oh,
Yeah, I
he
mean there
yeah.
was tombstones with crosses on them,
Oh,
and he's Jewish.
right.
So I
Yeah.
don't know what was going on with that.
Hmm.
I mean, overall, it's very enjoyable and it's certainly
Mhm.
very ambitious.
It is. Yeah. Adam says he would like to see a Spider-Man 2099 Blade Runner style movie, live action.
I'd like to see any live action Spider-Man
No
2099
doubt.
movie.
Josiah has the whole series of 2099. Thank you
Excellent.
for your comics. Landon also asked about Immortal Hulk, but we just hit that up.
Yep.
Let's see.
How many people are watching this thing?
We have 36 live right now. I can see we've got 9 on Facebook, 25 on YouTube, and 1 on Twitch. Twitch is the video game streamer network, which why not?
What do I think of the Sin Eater retcons?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the one shot.
Well, it was more than a one shot. It continued over several issues where. Yeah.
I read this Sin Eater 1 issue.
Mm-hmm.
That once again took place in the afterlife because, of course, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I remember liking it when I read it. I mean, I thought it was kind of out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought I pretty much told Sin Eater's entire story. But, this is comic books.
Yeah.
So, I've said it before. In comic books, the pearly gates are revolving doors.
Exactly. And if you've been at Marvel, like we said, 36 years, you see it come and go. It ebbs and flows. Characters you killed come back to life. So it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I brought back characters, who were dead. I mean, one of the first characters I brought back was the leader. In his previous appearance, he fell into a volcano. Yeah. I never even really bothered to explain how he survived that.
Yeah. Let's see. Hornacek is saying, spill all the tea, Mr. David. As in, tell us all the behind-the-scenes stuff of Owsley and Shooter. Michael is talking about Shooter was a fine writer, but how could he not recognize how good Peter David was? Besides Frank Miller and Alan Moore, he was at the forefront of the genre. His 1986 comics and they still hold up today. I agree, Michael.
Well, if you ask Jim Shooter, he'll say that he did recognize what a fine writer I was.
But they ended up firing you, so that just makes absolutely no sense.
Well, on the other hand, I was then hired onto the Hulk, so
yeah, it worked out. I mean, for you.
Well, it worked out, and the thing was, when Bob Harris offered me the Hulk, I said, "Aren't you worried you're going to get blowback from Editorial about hiring me to do the Hulk?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "No, there will be no blowback because nobody else wants to do it." And I said, "What do you mean nobody else wants to do it?" He says, "I asked every writer from Marvel Comics and nobody wants to write the Hulk. Then I asked every editor who writes on the side from Marvel Comics and none of them want to write the Hulk. Wow. So nobody's going to give me trouble about writing you because nobody else is interested in it."
Right.
And indeed, he received no blowback from hiring me to do the Hulk.
There you go. Michael also writes that the Commuter Cometh was a subject of his 8th grade speech.
Really?
Well, there you go.
Okay, I have no idea what you make a speech about it. But okay.
Michael, tell us more in the comments. What was your speech about? We'll talk about that. Ira talks about the little girl. Want to borrow my big wheel when Spidey couldn't swing away.
Yeah, that was Shayna.
Shayna's doing the voice. Yep.
Yeah, Shayna got some good lines in there.
Gary wants you to
Shayna now runs a movie theater down in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
It's called Sunray Cinema. It actually managed to outlast the COVID.
Oh, so, very. That's yeah.
They also make fantastic pizza there.
Oh, cool.
It's called Sunray Cinema. So swing by Sunray Cinema if you live in Jacksonville or anywhere in the Florida area.
Gary wants you to take over the Amazing Spider-Man title, please.
That's not really up to me.
We can put it in someone's ear.
Go ahead.
Let's see.
They're much more likely to listen to you than me.
Adam says Nick Spencer definitely honors Peter David's Spidey work, I would say.
Good.
Hornacek says, I love Peter David's X Factor run. You just got to write X Factor again.
I did.
Yeah. That's fun.
I did. Yeah, Marvel invited me to come back and write an X-Men Legends 2-parter using my original team in X Factor. And they said, who would you like to have draw it? And of course I said, Todd Nauck. And and within an hour we had him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so now they listen to me. And I had actually a lot of fun writing that 2-parter. I was particularly entertained with Quicksilver.
Oh,
I mean,
I haven't read it yet. I need to pick that book up. I haven't read that one.
Oh yeah, there's a great sequence where Crystal goes into the bedroom to wake him up, and he sits up in bed rubbing his eyes, and she says, "You need to get dressed," and he's sitting there in his boxer shorts, and he says, "Why?" And she says, "Just do it." And in the very next panel, he's fully dressed, and she jumps back and goes, "Ah! Don't do that." And he says, "You told me to."
You know, we were talking.
That was a lot of fun writing a 2-parter.
We were talking about Jacksonville, Florida, and Oliver is from Jacksonville, Florida, and he frequents the theater. There you go. And so Shayna is great or awesome. That's very cool. We've got thank you for the super chat, Vinkman. What was it like writing the Ghostbusters one-shot? What in Sam Hain just happened for IDW?
I don't know if you heard my wife chortling in the background.
But
my wife was the co-writer on that.
Oh, that's so cool.
For some reason, IDW never put her name on the damn thing.
Oh.
I have absolutely no idea why. But it was... Kath, do you want to answer the question?
What was the question?
What was it like writing the Ghostbusters one-shot? What in Sam Hain just happened for IDW? And how much did you enjoy Dan Schoning's art?
I love the art.
Kath, come over here.
I can hide.
No. Here. Kath, here. Answer the question.
Okay.
You're interviewing your wife.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
I love the art.
You.
Hello. I love the art. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope to do it again sometime because they were fun characters to play around with, especially Janine.
Oh yeah. Did you guys like the new trailer that came out? The new Ghostbusters trailer?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
I think it looks good.
It really does. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, hopefully it won't generate a raft of negative reviews like the all-female one did.
Yeah. I saw your tweet or your Facebook post about, and I'm not a He-Man guy, but I watched the first episode like you did. I'm like, what's the big deal? It's not bad.
Yeah.
The internet's just, they love to attack, don't they?
Got to get caught up.
Yeah. People just get in clumps and just attack whatever. It's just an awful thing of fandom. It's just awful, I think.
That's fan is short for fanatic.
Well, they live up to that name, don't they? Yeah.
It was pointed out in an ongoing series called Honest Trailers that Syndrome in The Incredibles was absolutely one of the greatest villains in animation because he correctly predicted modern fan mentality, where you're a fan of something until it doesn't live up to your expectations, and then you want to destroy it. And that's pretty much exactly accurate.
Right.
And I really don't understand this incredible fan hostility toward pretty much everything. I mean, when Robert Downey Jr. was cast as Tony Stark, people were decrying it.
Michael Keaton too, back in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh God. Oh, Michael, that was insane. I was at a convention.
Yeah.
Where I was on a panel and we were asked what we thought of the casting of Michael Keaton and the direction of Tim Burton on the Batman film. And the other guys on the panel were decrying it and saying it was going to suck, it was going to be awful. And I sat there and I said, look, Tim Burton is a director. Michael Keaton is an actor. Just because they're primarily known for comedy doesn't mean they can't do a serious take on Batman. And I, for one, am going to wait until I see the movie before I render a judgment.
Right.
It is the only time in my life that I've almost ever been booed off stage. The other guys on the panel looked at me like I had farted in synagogue. Flash forward a couple of years, and I'm at that same convention. And I hear a couple of fans talking about the fact that there's going to be a Batman Returns.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them says, well, I'll tell you one thing. It better be Michael Keaton and Tim Burton because otherwise it's going to suck. And I went, yeah! It's...
And now 30 years later, they're like, oh, Michael Keaton's going to be in the Flash movie? He was the best Batman ever.
Yeah, he was the best Batman ever. Fans decried Heath Ledger as the Joker before he won the Oscar.
Yeah.
They decried Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They sneered at the fact that Marvel cast a couple of unknowns, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, as Thor and Loki.
Right.
So if the actors were known, fans complained about it.
Yeah.
If they were unknown, they complained about it.
Right.
Everyone's complaining about Robert Pattinson as Batman.
Watch the damn film and then judge.
I saw the trailer. He looks pretty good in the trailer. I mean, it's Batman. I could do that. It's just this fan tendency to just dismiss anybody in a role. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. I mean,
We've got a question from Matt talking about the behind the scenes of the reveal of Ned Leeds as the Hobgoblin.
God. Could you give me some water?
Oh, this sounds like a wind up. You're about to in the beginning.
Yeah, really.
there was Ned Leeds.
Okay. Oh, God. We had a Spider Writer meeting.
Okay.
In which we were going to decide who was going to be the Hobgoblin. Because Roger Stern was leaving the books. And Roger had wanted it to be Roderick Kingsley. An idea that absolutely none of us liked.
Okay.
So as the writers, we got together and we decided that Ned Leeds was going to be the Hobgoblin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Tom, who was writing Amazing Spider-Man at the time, was going to take the lead in laying the groundwork for Ned Leeds being the Hobgoblin. So one day I'm in my office and Jim Owsley comes over and he says, you're going to be writing the issue that reveals who the Hobgoblin is, and we're going to go out to lunch and I'm going to tell you. And I said, it's Ned Leeds. And he said, we're going to lunch. And I went, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we go out and Jim says to me, it's going to be the Foreigner. Now, the Foreigner was an assassin character that I had created.
Oh, okay.
And I
didn't
said,
know you created them. Oh, that's awesome.
I said, it can't be the Foreigner. I said, first off, it's completely contrary to his character to be a disguised supervillain. And second, we've been saying for ages that the Hobgoblin is secretly someone who's been around for years. I only introduced the Foreigner a year ago.
No, yeah.
It can't be the Foreigner. I said, it's Ned Leeds. And he says, it can't be Ned Leeds. I said, why? He says, I'm killing off Ned Leeds. I went, what? Yeah, he says, yes, in a Spider-Man Wolverine one-shot. I said, why in the name of hell are you killing off Ned Leeds? He says, to piss off DeFalco.
Oh, good grief.
And I go, you can't do this. I mean, we cannot do this story. And he says, it's already written and drawn. And I'm going, oh, my God.
No.
And I said, it can't be. And he says, okay, well, come up with somebody else. And I go and I reread Tom's work, trying to figure out who could be other than Ned Leeds. And I come to the conclusion that it can't be anybody except Ned Leeds, which is why 99% of the letters we got said, I bet Ned Leeds is the Hobgoblin. The remaining 1% said, he can't be the Hobgoblin. It's too obvious. But Tom had been really thorough in laying the groundwork for it to be Ned.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to Owsley and I say, look, do we show Ned Leeds dying? And he says, no. Peter returns to his apartment and finds Ned dead and tied to a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. Have we got somebody who was a villain who fought the Hobgoblin and got his ass kicked?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yes. My God. I'm like Jack-o'-lantern.
Okay, yeah.
He's Jack-o'-lantern. And I said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll have it be that Jack-o'-lantern wants the Hobgoblin dead. He goes and hires the Foreigner. The Foreigner is going to know Ned Leeds is the Hobgoblin because he's the Foreigner.
Mm-hmm.
He knows his stuff. He's got a thick file on him, probably. So the Foreigner's men will show up and kill Ned and take the costume and leave him tied to a chair.
Okay.
And Jim says, so we're not going to have a final confrontation with the Hobgoblin and the Foreigner and Spider-Man? And I said, right. I said, here's the advantage. Until we do the reveal for the next 5 months, Ned Leeds will go from being the person that everybody thinks is the Hobgoblin to the person that everyone is convinced could not possibly be the Hobgoblin. Because we wouldn't kill off a Hobgoblin before being a final confrontation with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And Jim says, everyone's going to hate it. And I'll say, yeah, but we have no choice. And at least it will be unprecedented. And no one will ever do anything like it again.
Yeah.
It's going to be the most memorable reveal ever.
Yeah.
And he thought about it. He said, okay, let's do it. And that was exactly what we did. And the fan reaction was, as I figured, they hated it.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't really help that the main artist, who was really good, did the issue up until the big reveal page. And then we changed artists for the rest of the story to one who was vastly inferior. So not only did the story do something shocking and unexpected, but the artwork then took a downward spiral.
Right.
And the fans freaking hated it.
Yeah.
Until some years later, when Roger Stern finally got to do his Roderick Kingsley story, which had the fans going, Roderick Kingsley? Screw that. I like what Peter David did better. So, it
can't win.
Worked out thanks to Roger writing the unpopular Roderick Kingsley story.
Speaking of Ned Leeds, did you hear what happened? He got better. And
he got better from dying?
He did, and he's going to be a father. Betty Brant is knocked up by him.
Really?
In the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Betty's got it. Yeah.
How did they explain that he died?
Let's see. How did he... Help me, chat, because I read it, but it's not coming back to me. How did he... Oh, he took some goblin serum, and he got better.
From being strangled?
I guess so. I think he wakes up in the morgue. The morgue. Yeah, as you do.
Sure, why not?
But anyway, Ned is back, and he's going to be a father. There you go. Stick around long enough, it all happens, doesn't it?
I guess.
Chi-Town Spidey says, love your work, Mr. David. I especially love the Peter MJ story, 5 more minutes. You wrote Ultimate Spider-Man before Mr. Bendis did.
Yes, I did.
In that little short story book. I love that story.
I think I edited that series, that book.
Yep, that was a great one.
Yeah, and that was it's a nice little short story focusing on Peter and Mary Jane. I mean, I have to say that I really did like Peter and Mary Jane as a couple. And I was not thrilled with One More Day.
Right.
I mean, you know what? Aunt May's an old lady.
Yeah, time to go.
Let her die.
Yeah.
Let her freaking die.
Yeah.
And Mephisto saved her for no particular reason. But what the hell?
That could be coming up to a head in the recent, as Nick Spencer wraps up his run. Mephisto is making appearances, so hopefully that the deal with the devil will be undone. But and I think you said in our previous interview, but it's been 10 years. Do you prefer? Is Mary Jane your favorite of the love interests for Peter?
I think so. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Although I am kind of fond of the Black Cat.
Oh yeah, you write a
I'm
good.
having a lot of fun writing.
You are
in the thing. The current version of her in Crossroads is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Where in issue 2, I have her going to Doctor Strange for help, and she said, she says, there was this witch named Carmela, and she's after a nunstone, and then Carmela shows up, and Strange looks at her and says, "Carmela, the nunstone," and for Black Cat is just a lot of fun. I have him in an upcoming issue. Mm-hmm. I have him conjuring images of Spider-Man using ley lines. And the Black Cat says, "Ley lines?" And he says, "Yes, they're lines of magical force." And she says, "Oh, okay. When you said ley lines, my mind went somewhere else."
I like you referenced that he had his mask off in Symbiote, and Felicia, that was referencing that she doesn't like what he looks like under the mask.
No, she
likes
doesn't.
The image. Yeah.
She's in love with Spider-Man, not Peter Parker.
The issue that just came out last week, I forgive me, I can't remember the magical villain. He's a very obscure that just got taken out with a gun, and it said "dumbass." I thought that was. I laughed out loud with that. I thought that was
this guy is so obscure, even I can't remember it.
So,
sometimes I just go onto Google and put obscure Marvel villains.
They're essentially open books. Why not?
Pretty much.
Since we last talked, 10 years ago, you came back to Miguel. We were talking about that. You came back in 2014 for a second and a third volume of 2099. And it's hard to believe, but next year is Miguel's 30th anniversary, 1992. Yes. Hopefully you come back and do something with that. What was it like going back for volume 2 with Spider-Man 2099?
Well, what happened was that, oh God, I'm blanking on his name. Steve Wacker.
The editor, yeah.
Steve Wacker was leaving Marvel, and he wrote this goodbye letter, and in it he said that Marvel was working on doing a new Spider-Man 2099 series. Mm-hmm. And some other writer was actually working on it.
Oh.
And Fandom, in a rare instance, united.
Oh, good.
And they said, we will definitely read a new Spider-Man 2099 comic as long as Peter David is writing it. Nice. And I was getting emails from people going, "Are you writing it?" I'm going, "No, I'm not writing it." And then one day I get a call from the editor. Mm-hmm. And she says, "Would you be interested in writing Spider-Man 2099? And I have no idea who the other writer was, but they fired the poor schmuck. And I said, "Okay, sure." And she said, "Good. I need a 5-page story to go into Amazing Spider-Man." I think it was 300. I could be wrong. And I'm going to need that by Friday.
Oh.
And I said, okay. I haven't thought about this character in 20 years.
Right.
And I said, when is issue number 1 coming out? Mm-hmm. And she said, July. And we were having this conversation in May. And I said, it's May. And she said, yes, you're very behind in your deadlines. All part of one conversation.
Yeah.
So I banged out the 5-page story, and then I banged out the 22-page first issue, thinking about the character for the first time in 20 years. And all things considered, I'm kind of pleased I was able to just bang that sucker out.
Yeah. And you flipped it. You didn't have him in the future. You had him come back to the future.
No, I did not do that. Dan Slott brought him back to modern day.
So that was what you were handed with the character at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that happens with me all the time. People assume that I make these changes. Yeah. People ask me why I changed the Hulk to gray. I didn't. Al Milgrom did that.
Yeah.
People ask me, why did I bring Spider-Man 2099 back to modern day? I didn't. Dan Slott did that.
Right. That second volume went about 12 issues, and you came back for a third volume. You checked. Yeah. I don't know. Did Marvel mandate a new costume for the guy, for Miguel, with the white?
Yeah, I have no idea why.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like the original costume.
I do too. It's
but
perfect.
Somebody just came up to me at this convention I was at and told me how much they loved his new costume. So, what are you going to do?
It's in the video game, both of them. So,
really?
Yeah, you've got the white one, and you've got the PS4 or PS5 Spider-Man.
Cool.
The last issue, let's see when this came out. Was it 18, I think, or 2017? You gave Miguel a wife and a kid.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that. That was, and then I love the last line. I think I forget what it was, but you said I only had to give up my wife and my kid, but things will turn around or something like that. I like
something like that.
I like that last line of it. Talk about that decision to give him a wife and a kid.
Oh, geez. Let's see. It was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Who remembers these things? It was just honestly the direction the story developed.
Yeah.
I gave him a kid so I could put him back into the black and red costume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I gave him a wife so the kid would have, a mom.
Exactly.
Married mom.
Let's see. I've got some other comments coming in. We're up to 40 viewers live, so that's kind of cool.
Is that good?
That's good.
No, we usually have 170, but
Matt has a Todd McFarlane question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Issue 340. Did you like the issue that came out when Hulk went up against Wolverine, which is a classic?
Oh yeah. I mean, the reason I wrote that was because Todd wanted to draw Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I went to the X offices and I said, I want to borrow Wolverine for an issue of Hulk. And they said, no, we feel that Wolverine is too overexposed. And I managed to talk him into it. I told them that I would do a story that tied in directly with what was going on in X-Men at that particular point in time. And they walked me through exactly where Wolverine was at that point. And then I adhered to all of that so that the story would tie in very closely with what was going on in X-Men.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I loved working with Todd on Hulk. As a matter of fact, when Todd went on to work with David Michelinie on Spider-Man, I ran into him at a convention and he said, I really appreciate all the attention my career is getting for working on Spider-Man, but I really miss the stories that you wrote for me to draw. And I was very flattered by that.
That's nice.
But that's why I put Wolverine in there to make Todd happy.
Anime Hunter says Ned dug himself out of the grave. That's what you do.
Why not? Buffy the Vampire Slayer did it.
Why not?
Spike did it.
Adam says your Black Cat back in Spec was a badass. She took on Sabretooth by herself.
Yes, I know. I wrote that.
She is and was a badass.
Chris Claremont hated that story. He said there was no way that he said that she shouldn't have been able to hurt Sabretooth because he had a healing factor. I said, yeah, that's nice. You haven't said that in any of the comic books. And he said, yeah, but he does.
No.
And I thought, freaking wonderful.
Adam says no one else should be writing Miguel except Peter David.
Okay.
Javi says, hey, Javi, any plans for Miguel in the future? Well, what did you think of Nick Spencer's take on 2099?
I haven't read Nick's take on 2099.
Yeah.
I do have plans for Miguel. I cannot discuss them.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
They will be announced later, probably early next year.
30th anniversary. We kind of talked
That's
about
right.
it. 30th anniversary. After you did 2099 Volume 2 and 3, you also tackled Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. And we were just talking about fan outrage. The fans did not like this costume with the Bagley's art with the face on the thing. So it changed in a couple. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, people were just before it came out.
The new costume.
Yeah.
Went through so many design changes.
Yeah.
The editors kept wanting this change and this change and this changed. And it was so far away from what Bagley originally designed.
Yeah.
That I felt really bad because I thought his original design was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And it got changed an infinite number of times. And so what they came up with was a costume that was a reflection of input from several people and uncounted changes.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, and what happens is I've written the first couple of issues and Marvel Editorial comes back to me and they say, okay, get rid of the new costume, put him in the original one.
Yeah.
And I went, what? They said, yeah, we're just going back to the original costume. And what I did was I had him run into some Spider-Man fans,
Right.
including one who's wearing the original Scarlet Spider costume.
Right. Yeah.
And he takes it from the fan. And I had the fans looking at his costume and using all the criticisms that fans had used online, which resulted in fans going, this is how psychic Peter David is.
You're a genius.
They said he knew everything we were going to hate and wrote this in anticipation of it. No, I wrote that afterwards because they put out the original drawings and the fans were merciless
They were.
in their criticism. So I used their criticisms in having the fans who were in costumes dissing his outfit. Now, the thing was, that was not my original story.
Okay.
My original story was completely different. I had him wandering into the road company production of the Spider-Man musical. And
that's funny.
He has to change costumes. I don't remember the excuse I came up with.
Yeah.
And hanging there backstage
there you go.
is an original Scarlet Spider costume. So he puts that on and
Why
then
not?
winds up being pushed on the stage and dancing in the chorus line. It was absolutely hilarious. And Marvel came back and said, no, you can't make fun of the Spider-Man show. So like, okay, fine. So I came up with the idea with the fans, but I really wish I could have done the Spider-Man show one. That would have been hilarious.
That was cool. You did 25 issues on that one. You ended with Ben Reilly possibly enjoying being a villain. I mean, he was cloned 27 times, I think. Talk about that. I mean,
Marvel Editorial told me that in a subsequent series, Ben Reilly was going to be salvaged.
Yeah.
That he was going to turn into a hero again. But they wanted it to happen in this series. So I couldn't do his redemption in Scarlet Spider.
Right.
I had to end with him being a villain.
Okay.
Which was not an ending that I was really thrilled with.
Yeah.
I wasn't jazzed about the prospect of having him end in failure.
Yeah.
And indeed, a lot of fans didn't like it either, and I absolutely cannot say I blame them. But it was mandated by Editorial. I never read the follow-up series, so I have no idea
Well,
if
I
they
think
did.
I think it's coming out soon. I think it's called Spider-Man Beyond. And Ben Reilly,
they're just doing it now?
Yeah, just now. I think fans, you could write in chat, but I think since you wrote them, the only time I've seen Ben, he was teaming up in Iron Man with Leapfrog. Iron Man got some D-list characters and went on a mission. But
Wonderful.
I think they're just now getting to the redemption of Ben Reilly's story. So
about time.
Let's see. We've got some other questions. Javi says he will be there. Miguel plus Peter David equals gold.
Excellent.
Adam says we're actually getting closer to the actual 2099.
Yeah, pretty much.
30 years of 2099. I am so old. Let's see. Matt wants to know your favorite Star Trek novel that you wrote.
Imizadi.
Oh, yeah. I read something the other day that Marina Sirtis said that's the only book she's ever read of Star Trek fandom.
Really?
I mean, she loved it. So I thought that was a nice compliment to you. That's the only one she ever read.
Yeah, really.
Eternia,
I'm very pleased about that. She liked it. Good.
She did. Eternia Forever says, Peter, are you going to write anything for season 4 of Young Justice? Rumors are in that it's in the works.
No.
Oh.
I asked Greg Weisman about that. They're not using me this season.
Oh. Adam says Ben should have never been brought back.
Okay.
Everybody comes back. Ned Leeds didn't he? It's now a father. Is there anything that you wished you could have done that you didn't get the opportunity to do? Gabriel asks.
Well, there's something that I want to do that I kind of did.
Okay.
I want to do a story in which Tarzan meets the Phantom.
Oh.
And then I was hired by a small press publisher to do a Phantom series. And I said, I want to do the Phantom meets Tarzan. And they said, we will clear it with Edgar Rice Burroughs' people. And they contacted Edgar Rice Burroughs' people, and Edgar Rice Burroughs' people said, yes, you can do it as long as you're willing to pay us a stupid amount of money.
Oh.
And the publisher said, I can't afford to pay them the stupid amount of money. And what I came up with was that there was a character in the very early Phantom strips. I think his name was Jimmy Wells, if I'm recalling correctly. And he was originally going to be the Phantom before Lee Falk came up with the idea of, that no, he's 400 years worth of guys and he's Kid Walker and that kind of thing. But originally Jimmy Wells was going to be the Phantom. He showed up for a small but pivotal role in the Billy Zane Phantom movie. And Jimmy Wells is this really big, strong-looking guy because he was originally going to be the Phantom. And I thought about it, and I said, if you ever met John Clayton, Lord Greystoke, you wouldn't realize that he was Tarzan.
Okay.
You'd think he's a big British guy. And that's it. He's wearing a suit, and you wouldn't think that this guy grew up in trees and was raised by apes. And I said, what if we basically make Jimmy Wells Tarzan? We won't call him Tarzan, but he will fill the role that Tarzan would have filled in my story.
Okay.
And the editor said, go for it.
Nice.
And I wound up writing it. And probably the best bit in the comic is when the Phantom is slugging out with him. And Diana Palmer shows up and she takes one look at him and she goes, Jimmy! And Jimmy looks and he goes, Diana! And she leaps into his arms. And the Phantom is sitting there going, what the hell is happening here? And I wound up I really think the story worked better than having it be Tarzan because Jimmy was someone who's unique to the Phantom. And it fleshed out Jimmy, who had not been seen in the Phantom comics in something like 50, 60 years.
Kind of like that Judge in Symbiote Spider-Man. You gave him another story. Yeah.
Exactly right. So I didn't get the chance to write the story that I wanted to, but the one that I wrote was actually better than the one that I originally had planned.
Yep. Jeff has a question. He's been on a recent Halo book binge.
Oh, good.
And I want to say that your Hunters in the Dark book stands out as one of the best. Any chance of seeing Luther Mann and his Misfit team again?
I have no idea. I mean, Pocket Books hasn't hired me to write anything in years. So I have absolutely no idea. I mean, if they called me and said, do you want to do another Halo book? I'd say sure. I mean, I remember that Hunters in the Dark book. I originally wanted to title it Raiders of the Lost Ark, but they wouldn't let me call it that, which was a shame because they really do wind up raiding a Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So that would have been absolutely perfect. But I have no idea. Ask Simon & Schuster.
What is the deal? Didn't they get bought out by Penguin, or am I confusing that with Pocket Books? What's the deal with Pocket Books? Like, I haven't.
Pocket Books is a division of Simon & Schuster.
Okay, I get it. But yeah, I missed the New Frontier Star Trek books that you used to do. I didn't.
Yeah, I know. I would love to write more Star Trek. I even pitched an idea for a Star Trek novel for it to them. They said they'd get right back to me. That was a year ago. I'm not really holding my breath.
I get it.
I'd be happy to write another New Frontier book if they asked me to, but I haven't really written anything for them in 8 years.
I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Let's see. I loved Mzadi, and I'm not even a Trekkie, says Jet.
Excellent.
Back to Ben Reilly real quick. You wrote him before the ongoing, I think, in that DC versus Marvel, right?
Was Ben Reilly in there? I don't remember.
Yeah, because Ben Reilly fought Superman, and I remember a story, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had your choice when Miguel met the Spider-Man meets Spider-Man 29. You had your choice of Peter or Ben, and you picked Peter.
Yes.
And with that particular one, I think you had a Ben in it. So
no.
Okay.
No, Ben Reilly was not in Spider-Man versus Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure of that. I was told, they said I could use Peter or Ben, but that I should use Ben because they felt that Ben was the Spider-Man of the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, no.
He's not. Yeah, exactly.
No, he's not. He's a side character. We're going to go back to having Peter Parker as Spider-Man probably within the year. So I'm going to have him. This is my one chance to have the two characters meet. It's going to be Peter.
Exactly. Here is some, but in that, what was it like working on that Marvel DC team up? I mean, I imagine we probably won't ever see that again.
No.
I mean, they're too big of companies, Disney and Warner.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll work together again.
No, it works so well because Mike Carlin and Mark Grunwald were brothers in all but blood.
Okay.
Mike was Mark's assistant editor, and their office was always insane when they were at Marvel together. I mean, there's one day where they had the door closed, and all we heard was the sounds of hammering and sawing. And we came in the next day, and they had built platforms for their desks, so their desks were now 2 feet in the air. It was insane. And then awesome. Mike wound up going to work for DC Comics as editor-in-chief eventually. And the two of them were going to work together to do Marvel versus DC. That may have been as much the two of them putting it together as anything else.
Right.
And we don't really have two people who share that bond anymore between the two companies. And what happened was they chose me and Ron Mars to write it because we both were experienced with both companies. And we all showed up. We all went over to Mark Grunwald's hotel apartment one Sunday or Saturday. It was the weekend. And we were basically a bunch of comic book fans doing a dream project.
Yeah.
Because the concept of Marvel versus DC is a constant thing. I mean, while I was working in direct sales, a phone call was once forwarded me from the front desk. They would always forward stuff to me that they didn't want to bother Editorial with. And I answered the phone, and this kid said, "Hi, who would win in a race, Superman or the Silver Surfer?" And I said, without hesitation, the Silver Surfer. And he said, "Okay, thank you." Of course I said that. I work for Marvel. If I worked for DC, I would have said Superman.
How did they decide who won the fights of those? I think it was fans originally, wasn't it?
Well, it was both.
Okay.
The fans were going to vote on the fights that happened in issue 3.
Okay.
Issue 2 was going to have a series of battles, and we decided who was going to win. Because that way, if fan voting sent it entirely over to Marvel or entirely over to DC, neither company would get totally blown out.
Yeah.
So we decided that in the fights that we put into issue 2, we'd split it down the middle. 2 would be won by DC characters, 2 would be won by Marvel characters.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't remember who won the fan ones.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I do remember one. I remember the fans had Lobo beaten by Wolverine. No. No. I work for Marvel. I love Logan. No. Lobo can take on Superman. Wolverine cannot beat him.
Yeah.
It was so preposterous that Ron had the fight happen behind a bar. And we didn't actually see the fight.
Oh, well, there you go. That solves it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how it.
If memory serves, I think Superman beat the Hulk. Was that painful, or was that? Do you believe that would happen?
I would tend to think Superman could probably beat the Hulk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I write that one? I don't remember.
I don't. It's been 20 plus years. But
Yeah.
I found a couple images. I swear that's Ben. And he's got the Ben Reilly costume on it. The fans on chat are discussing it. One person says,
"No, that's Peter."
Okay.
It's Peter. He's fighting Superboy, I think.
Yeah, right there.
Right, it's Peter fighting Superboy.
Okay.
Wait, hold on.
Oh,
go back to it.
Well, he's got the Ben Reilly costume on, and I've got a couple pictures. I think I just went to Google Images. And
Wait, I want to read the dialogue.
Oh, okay. Here, let me blow that up if I can.
Well, yeah, you had it up before.
I did. There you go. Let me zoom in.
Okay.
I'm a clone. Try to grasp the concept. A clone? Yeah, clone. Hope you don't have a problem getting your butt kicked.
No, I think that's Peter.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
But anyway, I was thinking that was the first. I think you did, but again, I should have researched it better. But anyway.
So what happened was Ron and I teamed up to write issue 1.
Okay.
And Mark and Mike did not like it.
Oh.
Because our styles were so radically different that the book kept changing in tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I called up Ron and I said, okay, look, how about this? How about we each write 2 issues? And Ron said, well, which ones would you want to write? And I said, honestly, I'd like to write issues 2 and 4.
Okay.
And he said, are you kidding? And I said, no. He says, I want to write issues 1 and 3. I went, perfect. It's the ideal compromise. I wanted to write issue 2 because those were the fights that we had determined. I wanted to write issue 4 because that would be the conclusion of the series.
Right.
Ron wanted to write issue 1 because it'd probably have the largest sales. And issue number 3 because it would be the most heavily publicized because it had the fan voted stories in it.
Right.
I did not want to write issue number 1 because it's all introduction, which sounds incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to write issue 3 because I was sure the fans would screw it up, which in a number of instances they did.
Yeah.
Plus, poor Ron had to write every fight twice.
No.
Because at the time that he was writing it, we had no idea how the fan voting was going to go.
Right.
So that's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But he wanted it. So I kicked back and I said, fine.
Yep. I think we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. Let's get a couple questions in. We're 28 minutes over what we originally thought. So
I'm sorry.
hour has flown by. If you want to ask a couple questions before you wrap it up with Peter, feel free.
Okay.
Adam says, what's your favorite story of Spider-Man you've ever written?
Well, I still have a fondness for the Death of Jean DeWolf, but on the other hand, I also have a great fondness for my first issues of Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
Issues 1 through 25 that end with Rick Leonardi.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, you're going back to the Maestro. You've got another Hulk Maestro book coming out. House of M, is that what you said in the end of the last issue?
Yeah.
The latest mini?
Right. We have one more Maestro series and then we're done.
Oh, man.
There's only so far you can push it. I mean,
that's true.
In the series, we ended right before Future Imperfect.
Right. Yeah. Oliver says, how did Incredible Hulk 356, the Bikers or Wimps issue come about?
Oh, dude, I wrote it like 25 years ago. I have no recollection. I mean, I know that the Bikers or Wimps thing was put on the cover by Editorial. I mean, I really had almost nothing to do with any covers of Hulk. With 2 exceptions. It was the issue of Hulk that was titled Pulp Fiction. It was called Hulk Fiction.
Oh.
And I said to them, I want you to do the poster of Pulp Fiction, but have it be She-Hulk.
Yes.
Which they did.
Yeah.
And I also wrote this 6-issue Hulk Limited series. And one of the issues, I wanted them to do this classic rock cover illustration of a guy, of a barbarian sitting on horseback.
Oh, yeah.
And I said I wanted it to be the Hulk sitting on horseback. The funny thing was, fans criticized that, going, the Hulk would not be able to sit on a horse. And it's like, yeah, but it was Nightmare's horse. That should have tipped you off.
Man, these fans. Daniel says, I loved your run on Stephen King's Dark Tower. Were you a fan of the books before and any chance of a continuation?
There's always a chance, Stephen's around. I read the first Dark Tower book and was not especially blown away by it. And then I got a call from Joe Quesada, and Joe said, we would like to have you script Stephen King's Dark Tower. Are you a fan of the series? And I lied, and I said, of course I am. I then spent the entire month, I think it was September, I spent the entire month doing nothing but reading Dark Tower. And some of those books are like seriously thick books.
Yeah.
And what I was very surprised by was I still didn't like book 1. But Steve found his voice when he wrote book 2. Book 2 was dramatically different from book 1, and it was a much better book. And then I started to get into the series, and I blew through the series. And by blow, I mean I took an entire month to read all the Dark Tower books.
Right.
And I absolutely, by the time I got to book 6, I was absolutely, to the last book, I was absolutely in love with it. Now, the thing was, a lot of fans bitched about the last book because, they're fans.
Yeah.
And I can see, and basically, at the risk of spoilers, at the end of the book, the gunslinger basically starts his journey all over again. It ends with the first words of the first book. And a lot of longtime readers hated that. But I could understand why, because they invested 20 years reading this thing. I invested a month. So if you're going to blow through it in a month, it reads great. And the funny thing was, we did our original series, and then I had a stroke in Florida. This is like 8 years ago. And I get an email from Steve saying, I'm in Florida. I'd like to come and visit you. Because we all know, I was in a recovery center at that point.
Right.
And Steve went through the same thing, of course, because he got hit by a van.
I remember that, yeah.
And he showed up at the recovery center. And the funny thing was, people would walk past my room and they'd look in at Steve and it'd be like, I know this guy from somewhere. And when he got there, he signed in at the book. So every so often we'd hear someone shriek from down the hallway. So it meant that person went to see the name and went, ah! So while Steve, and we were just giggling about it, and while Steve was there, I said to him, and this is absolutely true, I said, Steve, fans want to see more of Dark Tower. They want to meet Roland's quartet. The people who accompanied him on his journey, who we never actually got to meet. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, they want to meet Eddie and the others. And he said, okay. And a couple weeks later, I get a call from the editor, and he says, we're doing more Dark Tower.
There
and
you
I
go.
said, well, thank God I had a stroke. Because,
and Stephen King came to the hospital. It all.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't predict that.
And once I told him that fans wanted to see more, he worked with Marvel, and we did more. I don't know if we have any plans to do any more of them.
Right.
And Simon & Schuster apparently now has the publishing rights. And they've been doing reprints of the work that we did. And the same editor at Simon & Schuster who said he would get back to me in a year, about the Star Trek book, told me that they were considering doing new Dark Tower comics and that I would be writing them. And he told me that 4 years ago.
Oh
So
man.
I'm not really holding my breath.
Marvel has really gotten to the licensing. They've got the Predator and Aliens. I think your take on either one of those would be a cool run. I don't know if you are a fan of them.
I volunteer. I'm not that big a fan of Predator. I love Aliens, though.
Yeah, I think you would do a good Alien book. Yeah.
Yeah, I volunteered to write it. Marvel hasn't taken me up on it.
Okay. I actually have on my desk. I wanted to ask you if you knew about it because I bought the hardcover back in the day. What Savage Beast? I actually remember because I saw you at a convention in Chicago in the late '90s, and I remember your anecdote. You said if She-Hulk was on this, you would have called it "What Savage Breast." But anyway, the reason I bring this up,
well, that's because that's the actual quote. Music has charms to soothe the savage breast.
Yes. But I don't know if you knew, but they did an audio version of it. It's up on Amazon. I haven't listened to it, but have you seen this?
No.
It's there's an audio sample here. It's $15 on Amazon. You would think they would let the writer know that that's in an audio form now. It just came out. I mean, look, last year. And they're going back to all those Byron Priest late 90s books, and they're doing voiceover work of it. Like here's another one. Wolverine Election Day by you has been an audio. Oh, can you see it? I don't think.
No, I just see Hulk.
Here, let me refresh. Let me refresh that tab. It's not showing up. Let me remove it and then add it again. If I move it, nope. I'm going to have to totally remove that tab. Let me close the window.
All right.
And but several of those books are now audiobooks. So let me.
What format are they in?
Audible. It looks like you can get an Audible, and I bet you it's like an MP3 they buy.
Is it a CD or is it what?
I don't know. But anyway, here's your Election Day book right here on Amazon.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, $15. And there's a sample. Here, let's hear I don't know if let me remove it again, and we can hear a sample of the Hulk. Right. Share screen, Chrome tab, What Savage Beast, and I will play the audio sample.
Stopped all motion, lying in the fire of its own creation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like smoke swirled heavenward. And standing there watching it all was the immovable object. The smell didn't bother it, nor did the suffocating heat. It was not in the midst of the conflict.
Well, there you go. There's the
wow.
You can listen to a sample of that. Anyway, I wanted to get your opinion of those books being in audio form. I didn't know you didn't know about it. What are your thoughts?
Am I getting money from it?
Well, you should. You wrote the darn thing. But
it's news to me. I mean, I knew they did an audio book of the X-Men book that I wrote.
Yeah.
That was based on the Joss Whedon stuff.
Right.
But I did not know they were doing audio versions of my other books.
Yeah. They're right there. You should send another email, say, hey, I need my cut. I think they did Ultimate Spider-Man 2, the short story with the 5-minute story.
Really?
I don't see it in the suggestions down here.
Okay.
But I think they did that too. I haven't purchased them. I mean, I read them years ago, but I just thought it was cool that they're going back to the catalog and getting
that really
stuff. Real quick, we'll go through these questions and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Is there a character that you've always wanted to write but never had the chance? And it doesn't have to be Marvel. I kind of like to want to hear I think you've written everybody. Doc Savage.
I've always wanted to write Doc Savage.
Is there any Marvel characters that you haven't written? I think you've written them, almost all of them.
At some point or another, I've written pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever written Shang-Chi.
Oh,
but yeah, I've written everybody in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Mary says, I was reading your X Factor and got to the famous issue 39 with the birth of the baby. I just wanted to say how my jaw dropped. How did Editorial allow you to do that one?
Well, the problem was I had her get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marvel was going to be doing a big crossover story that involved the birth of the first mutant post House of M. And my editor told me I could not have Polaris give birth to the baby because we were going to be doing this crossover thing. And I was racking my brains as to what the hell I was going to do. I didn't want her to have a miscarriage. That seemed kind of depressing. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I was walking around the San Diego Comic-Con, and the idea just leaped into my head. I thought, wait a minute, we haven't established whether it was Jamie or a duplicate. What if it was a duplicate who was the father, and all the father did was sire another duplicate? And if Jamie picks it up, he will absorb it. And I went running around looking for Andy Schmidt, and I ran the idea, and I found him, and I ran the idea past him. And Andy said, "That's really sick. Let's do it."
Let's do it.
Now, the funny thing was, we wound up changing editors twice before the story came out. And with every editor, I had to repitch the idea. And every editor said the exact same thing. That's totally sick. Let's do it.
Nice. Muhammad just gave me the Amazon link, and he says they did indeed do an audio version of your short story book, which has 5 minutes in it. So here it is, right here. Came out in 2019, it looks like. So,
wow, 2019 was a busy year for me.
There you go.
Kath, we have stuff we got to order off Amazon.
Or I don't know if you have an Audible subscription. I guess you can stream it that way with an Audible membership, so you can play it that way.
I don't know.
Let's see. Simon says, did you make it clear to Marvel that you didn't like the idea of One More Day when you were doing your final Friendly Neighborhood issues?
No, because the decision wasn't really in my hands. Joe Quesada had made the decision. He was the boss, and it was his call to make. If people liked it, he would benefit from it. If they didn't like it, he would suffer from it. I mean, I didn't really see the need to basically have a throwdown with Joe over something that I was not going to win. He really didn't like the wedding of Peter and Mary Jane. He felt it limited them, and he came up with One More Day in order to end it.
Yeah. Speaking of fans that didn't like it, I didn't like it. I mean, it's kind of like you were talking with the Stephen King. We've been reading a married Peter and Mary Jane for 20 plus years, and to have that wiped away just seems like kind of a crappy thing to do.
Well, at least I'll say this.
Yeah.
As opposed to DC, which wipes things away by saying, okay, we're rebooting everything.
Yeah.
And they do this over and over again so that fans are constantly being told that the stories that they've been invested in for however many years didn't happen and don't count anymore.
Yeah, that's
say what you will about One More Day, but at least it was within Marvel's continuity.
Right.
We didn't just say, you know what, screw it. We're just going to reboot Spider-Man and make him a teenager again and just throw out everything else that's happened.
Right.
I mean, at least, love it or hate it, at least it's continuous.
True. Very true. It made me think, because we're celebrating 15 years of the podcast. This is the 23rd anniversary of the website. I'm feeling old. And my very first person that ever wrote back in the 90s on my guest book, if you remember those, where you could write on a website's guest book, was Keith R.A. DiCandido, your editor on those Marvel. Oh, I'm sorry. But he was your editor on those Marvel prose books. I loved those. I wish they continued more of them. Was that a fun gig to do the prose of the heroes? Yeah.
It was tremendously entertaining, but they wound up losing the license, and that just kind of ran its course.
Yeah. And Adam says, yes, next year is Spider-Man's 60th anniversary. That's Miguel's 30th and Spider-Man's 60th. That's crazy.
A funny thing is about those books. Marvel contacted me, this was some years back, and said, we're going to be doing a series of books called The End, in which it's the last story of a character written by someone who is closely associated with them.
Yeah.
And we would like you to write the last Hulk story. And I said, I already wrote a last Hulk story. It was called The Last Titan, and it ran in a Byron Price Hulk anthology.
Yeah.
And Bobby said, well, we own those stories. Can you adapt it into a comic book? And basically, it's just Bruce Banner wandering around a barren landscape thinking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going, how the hell am I going to convert this into a comic book?
Yeah.
But I wound up actually managing to turn it into a 48-page script, which Dale Keown, I think, did a wonderful job of drawing. And that was the last Hulk story.
Yep.
And it turned out to be very, very popular. Marvel's done several reprints of it.
They have, yeah.
They wound up doing an edition that bounded with Future Imperfect.
Yes. The last thing I have on my notes, and I meant to ask you, did you see the Maestro in the latest Avengers game that's on PS5, PS4? He's like a final boss. Did you see that at all?
No, I haven't, because I don't have PS5.
Oh yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, now you're saying it's on PS4 also?
Well, yes, you could buy that Avengers game on PS4. Yes.
After we have a PS4?
It's on the Hawkeye DLC. Is where
I've seen that on PS5, and you can't get a PS5.
Yeah.
But if we can get it on PS4, I'm going to go out to my nearest GameStop tomorrow and get it.
I'm just making you spend all the money tonight with the Audible stuff, etc. One other question I've always wanted to ask you is, I was a subscriber to Comics Buyer's Guide for years, and I loved your But I Digress column.
Thank you.
And the paper ended really suddenly, and I always wondered if you had a final column, or did that ever get printed? Did you have a wrap up to that long running column?
Yes, I wrote a final column. I mean, they didn't give me any warning.
Yeah,
they just one day said, "Okay, don't bother sending in a new But I Digress. We've stopped publication." But they eventually published some kind of an anthology. And they asked me to contribute it. So I actually got to write a final But I Digress column, which saw print in that whatever the hell it was that came out whenever.
I have that first one that put a bunch of your columns together. I didn't get the second one, so it's
no. It wasn't in the anthology book.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
It was a magazine that was essentially intended to be the last issue of Comic Buyer's Guide, although it was not published by Krause.
Okay. But yeah, after reading that for so long, is there a story why that paper just folded out? Obviously sales, is that what happened? Or I think
the company declared bankruptcy.
Yeah.
The company declared bankruptcy, and they folded like a cheap card table.
Oh, that sucks.
They gave us no warning whatsoever.
Hornacek says, am I crazy, or is the rumor that Peter David wrote the wedding vows for Spider-Man's wedding that took place at Shea Stadium?
No, that's correct.
You did.
That was one of the last things I wrote for Marvel when I was direct sales manager.
Oh.
They decided to do this wedding, this stunt where Stan Lee would be marrying Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
On the pitcher's mound at Shea Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss, Carol Kalish, came to me and she said, "Can you write the wedding vows for Stan?"
Huh.
And I was the one who came up with this ring, Ivy Webb. And I wrote the vows for Stan, and we were in the stand. We were in the stands. That was my last day working in direct sales for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some rowdy fans sitting behind us.
Oh no.
Making what the hell is this crap? And they were shouting. And I finally turned around. I said, "Would you guys please shut up? I want to hear this." And they said, "Why do you want to hear it?" And I said, "Because I wrote it." And they sat there for a moment. And they said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." And they went, "Okay."
Oh, that's funny. That's one way to shut up.
Settle down and listen to it. And they even laughed at the jokes, which was nice.
I don't remember what the vows were. Do you remember? I mean, it's been 30 years, but do you remember?
All I remember is with this ring, Ivy Webb.
The Webb. It's interesting you bring up the wedding.
I didn't bring it up.
Well, I'm sorry. Hornacek did. Right. But on our show, one of our panelists is Kelly, and she is trying to track down what happened to that wedding dress that was at the Shea Stadium event, and we found out it got stolen, and we don't know who stole it. I don't know if you know what happened after the event with that wedding dress. Do you?
I have in the slight. I think it was Willie Lee. I think designed.
Yes. Yeah.
My God, I can't believe I remember that name. I was completely unaware of that. Somebody stole it.
That's the latest we found. We tracked down the actress who was in the wedding dress, and she said the dress was stolen, and she never knew where it went or who stole her. It's never been found. So in some spider shrine, not mine, there is a Mary Jane wedding dress somewhere.
All I can think of is watch eBay.
Yeah, very true. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. Peter, tell me, tell the fans a little bit about what's coming up for you. You've got the Hulk Mini.
I can't. I mean,
oh yeah,
all the stuff I'm working on, none of it has been announced yet.
Oh man,
so I can't tell you anything about it. I mean, yes, I am writing for Marvel. Yes, I am continuing to write. What can I talk about? I'm writing some short stories, contributing to some anthologies. One I'm doing a superhero story for an anthology that Mike Friedman is editing. I'm doing a time travel anthology.
Oh, cool.
And my wife Kathleen and I are editing a couple of anthologies.
Nice. Which
should be fun. But I can't discuss any of the comic book work I'm doing. And I tell you, I mean, I wrote to my editors just a few days ago because I wanted to announce some of this stuff at a comic book convention and was told I couldn't announce it. So, sorry about that.
It's okay. And you have your, it's on my wish list. I haven't bought it yet, but your autobiography about the title about Mr. Sulu.
Mr. Sulu grabbed my ass. Yes.
That's very unforgettable title. I love that title.
It's absolutely true. I mean, there was a guy at the convention I was at, and he asked if I had any new work out. And I said, well, I have my autobiography, but I sold out of it. And he says, okay, I'm going to go on to Amazon and order it. What's it called? And I said, Mr. Sulu grabbed my ass. And he looked at me and he says, are you serious? And I said, yes, I am. And he entered Mr. Sulu grabbed my ass. There it is. All right.
And I've got it right here. It's on Amazon right there. There you can.
There we go.
Mr. Sulu grabbed my ass and other highlights from a life in comics, novels, television, films, and video games.
Yep.
There you go.
That's me.
You can read it on the Kindle or the paperback. So,
either way.
There you go. I was looking to see
if you do the paperback, you can send it to me and I'll sign it.
And I was looking if someone did an audio version of it after the discovery tonight,
I would tend to think if we did an audio version, I would be reading it.
I would hope so. Yeah, I would hope so.
I mean, I don't think they have any plans to do an audio version, but if they do, hey, McFarland, give me a call. I'll be happy to record it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Peter, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully, let's not make 10 years again that we talk.
It's up to you.
Oh, but thanks for celebrating 700 podcasts with us. This has been a lot of fun.
Happy to do it.
You're awesome. All right, fans, thank you so much for watching. That's a wrap.